Hey everyone, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're going on a fast-paced whirlwind tour of what is absolutely, undeniably the most famous country in the world, the United States of America. We're going to start way up high with the big picture geography and then zoom all the way down into some incredibly specific, honestly kind of quirky cultural trivia. So let's just dive right in.
Love it or hate it, it's really hard to argue that the US isn't the most famous country in the world. I mean, think about it. From its super complex politics and immense global power, to the movies, the music, the wealth, and those breathtaking landscapes, the list of cultural exports is practically endless. The sheer scale of American fame, it's just a totally undeniable fact of modern life.
So let's start with Section 1, the big picture. This single country goes by so many famous names. You've definitely heard the land of the free, or simply the US, and of course, the land of opportunity. And to actually make up that massive land of opportunity, the country is officially sliced up into 50 individual distinct states.
Geographically speaking, its borders are pretty straightforward, but totally defining. Up north, America famously shares a huge border with Canada, and down south, it meets Mexico. Basically, these two massive boundaries literally sandwich the mainland of this sprawling nation.
And guys, when I say sprawling, I really mean it. 333 million. That's the population of the United States right now, making it the third most populated country in the entire world. But it's not just about raw numbers. It is a highly dynamic, incredibly diverse population, racially and ethnically, spread all out across those 50 states.
Moving right along to Section 2, capitals and skyscrapers.
Okay, so this is really a tale of two completely different American hubs. On one hand, you have Washington, D.C. That's the official political capital, home to the world-famous White House. But then, contrast that with New York City, the most populated city in the country. Often called the Big Apple, this cultural hub is famous worldwide for its huge skyscrapers, the bright lights, and those legendary Broadway shows. It's a totally different vibe.
Now, since we just touched on Washington, D.C., it's absolutely crucial to understand how American politics actually operate. Structurally, the country has long functioned under a two-party system. You've got the Democratic Party and you've got the Republican Party. These are the two dominant political entities, and pretty much the entire political landscape is organized right around them. But hey, let's jump back to New York City for a second to marvel at another incredible figure. 4.5 million. That is the number of tourists who visit the iconic Statue of Liberty every single year. Seriously, just take a second to imagine the logistics of millions of people flocking to this one single landmark just to get a glimpse of American history. It's wild.
All right, that brings us to Section 3, culture and competition. Americans are a very proud people, and they're globally known for having this fierce, almost relentless competitive attitude. And that drive, it isn't just saved for business or politics. It literally permeates absolutely all aspects of life. It basically fuels their entire national culture.
And honestly, nowhere is that competitive edge more visible than in athletics. While they definitely compete in a lot of different arenas, American football easily reigns supreme as the most popular spectator sport in the country. You'll see entire communities gathering together just to cheer and, kind of compete vicariously through their favorite teams. You want a stat that perfectly demonstrates this global competitive edge? Here it is. The United States has impressively hosted the Olympic Games a staggering 8 times. 8. That is a record-breaking achievement. It's more than any other country in the history of the world. So yeah, they don't just love to compete, they absolutely love hosting the biggest competitions on the planet.
Which perfectly transitions us into Section 4, the tourist trail.
Because of all this global fascination we've been talking about, an incredible 80 million international tourists flock to the U.S. annually. They come for the natural wonders, like the Grand Canyon and Niagara Falls. They hit up the famous man-made sites, the Statue of Liberty, the White House, the Disney theme parks, and, of course, Las Vegas, a city so wild it literally comes with its own classic warning label. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Okay, let's zoom all the way into the micro level for Section 5, quirky American trivia.
Let's start with the ultimate face of American patriotism, Uncle Sam. But where did that name actually come from? Well, it turns out it originates from a meat packer named Samuel Wilson. Get this, during the War of 1812, he stamped his beef barrels U.S. to stand for the United States. But the soldiers playfully started joking that the beef was actually from Uncle Sam's. And just like that, the legendary moniker was born right out of a meatpacking plant. No way, right?
Now, let's pivot to something a bit more staggering. According to environmental studies, Americans actually produce an immense amount of waste. We're talking 4.4 pounds of trash per person every single day.
And when you multiply that individual habit by the massive 333 million population we talked about earlier, you get this mind-boggling number, 1.4 billion. That is 1.4 billion pounds of trash generated nationwide every single day. I mean, wowzers! It really makes you pause and think about the sheer environmental footprint of such a populous, consumer-driven nation.
All right, let's move back into history and see how our trivia timeline connects. So in 1812, we had the War of 1812, which, as we know, gave us the Uncle Sam beef barrels. Well, just 2 years later, right in the middle of that exact same conflict in 1814, another iconic piece of American culture was born. The Star-Spangled Banner was written, and of course, that would go on to become the official national anthem of the USA. And the pride Americans have in that anthem, it's intense. When surveyed, an overwhelming 90% of people confidently claim that they know every single word to the song. That is a massive display of national memory. Only 10% actually admit they don't know the whole thing. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a question to reflect on, just to measure your own civic pride. Do you know your national anthem? Like all the words? Think about it. Thank you so much for joining me on this macro to micro tour of the United States. Until next time, keep learning and stay curious.